Good morning, everybody. I would like to welcome you at today's webinar. It is the third from the series. Let's talk about ETV as a tool for green innovations in public tenders. So thank you very much for taking time out and being with us here today. Our today's meeting is co-hosted by the European Assistance for Innovation Procurement Initiative. My name is Izabela Ratman-Kosińska. I am the coordinator of the LIFEproETV project, and I'll be moderating this event for you today. So I also wanted to thank the European ETV Secretariat for supporting us with the organization and the promotion of this webinar. So before we start, I would like to go very quickly through the housekeeping rules for that webinar. The webinar is recorded. It will be available later on our website. So all the microphones of the participants are muted and the cameras are switched off. So, but we want to stay in touch with you. So if you have any questions during the presentations that you would like to be addressed later on during the question and answer sessions, please use the chat box for that. That will be a moderated chat box, so your questions will be displayed and discussed during the questions and answer session. So we will be also having some interactive sessions later on today that will be used for us to collect the feedback for the policy briefs that we are developing under the LIFEproETV project. So please participate in those sessions as well, because your voice and your opinions are really important for us. So, but let me tell you also why we are with you today, because we're implementing the LIFEproETV project that is dedicated to build the market acceptance and recognition of the ETV scheme through the green public procurement and innovation procurement and procurement in particular. We want to highlight that those tools could be really market drivers for ETV. So if you want to know more about our LIFEproETV project, please visit our website. We also encourage you strongly to follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter and join our ETV stakeholders community. So let me now go very quickly with the agenda for today. So after this opening session, we'll have 3 more sessions. The first one will be focusing on the importance of public procurement, green public procurement and innovation procurement as the tools that are facilitating the European and national environmental targets in EU, in the relevant policies. And then we'll talk during a very practical session on how ETV actually will be taken on or could be taken on board in the public procurement procedures. Here we prepared really very practical cases that we would like to share with you today. And the last session will be focused more on the national and regional strategies for public procurement and how ETV could probably be incorporated into them. The last session, as I already indicated, will be an interactive session when we will be voting with you some statements concerning the use of ETV in the procurement procedures. Before I do that, I wanted to tell you a little bit to set the scene on what is exactly ETV, because I think that some of you have never heard about that scheme before. So ETV is a voluntary environmental scheme which is implemented at the EU level as a European program, which is governed by the European Commission. And this program, the scheme, has a threefold objective. First of all, to help technology manufacturers, especially the small and medium enterprises, to market their new environmental technologies. Secondly, it is also to help the technology buyers in making the right choices on the technologies that are best fitting their actual needs, taking also into account the innovation and the best environmental added value provided by those technologies. And in this way, ETV is also facilitating the implementation of the EU and member states policies and regulations that are dealing with environment and innovation. So what ETV is providing an impartial and a credible way that the claims about the environmental technology performance that are made by the technology providers are true and based on sound scientific data. There are three important features of ETV. First of all, the scheme is ISO standardized. Secondly, it has a very strong quality and impartiality assurance behind it. And third, it is fit for early market stage innovations. And let me elaborate very quickly on those three features. First of all, the scheme is ISO standardized because the whole process and the procedures are carried out through robust and transparent procedures that are defined by an ISO standard 14034. And this standard is also considered a European norm and a national standard in very many EU countries. And that also ensures the EU and global recognition for ETV. The quality and impartiality framework for ETV is based, first of all, on the fact that the test data that are used to verify the performance need to meet very restrictive quality requirements that are defined by the ISO 17025 standard. This is the standard for the accredited laboratories. And then the verification bodies who are performing those verifications must comply, must be accredited to the ISO standard 17020. This is the standard for inspection bodies. And moreover, they must comply with the requirements for inspection body type A, so the most restrictive one. And the way ETV is fit for innovation is that it provides, unlike the certification schemes, it provides a flexibility in the choice of performance parameters to be verified, while at the same time, it provides a similar quality assurance framework as standardized schemes for or frameworks for compliance for mature technologies. And in this way, ETV enables to provide or prove performance of those technologies that, or those innovations that fall outside the regulations and standard covered by the schemes designed for mature technologies, or do not fit into the current legislative labeling or standardized performance frameworks. The role for ETV in the technology development change is quite important, because normally when we start talking about innovative technologies, their market uptake begins with a demonstration project where a lot of data is being generated by in-house testing or under the control of the technology vendor, technology provider. And this may not be sufficient for tendering procedures. This may not be sufficient to address the requirements of the buyers. For mature technologies, we have designed fixed, as I said, certification schemes that are typically performed by certified standardization or certification bodies. But again, those schemes have been designed for technologies that are already mature or already exist on the market, and they do not allow this flexibility to demonstrate the innovations. So what ETV is doing is actually bridging the gap by enabling the verification of performance of an innovative technology and combining it with a quality assurance framework that is well known to the buyers, to public tenders as well. So which technologies can be verified under ETV? Technologies that deliver the so-called environmental added value, so more beneficial or less adverse environmental impact compared to the technologies currently provided on the market. So this could be different treatment technologies, this could be different types of new materials with the use of secondary raw materials or bio-based products. Then it could be also any type of a measuring equipment that is used to indicate the environmental impacts. The technology must be mature at the TRL level that is minimum 7 or already available on the market. Which areas are currently covered by the ETV scheme? The three technology areas: water treatment and monitoring technologies, energy technologies, and materials, waste, and resources. Beginning 2022, the scheme will be expanded, and that will happen later spring this year. It will be expanded by 4 new technology areas concerning air pollution monitoring technologies, everything that deals with soil and groundwater monitoring and remediation, environmental technologies in agriculture, and cleaner production processes. This is more focused on the sustainable industrial processes. Who can apply for an ETV? It could be a technology provider, a technology owner, a technology manufacturer, but also any legal authorized representative. And that could be investor, that could be, for example, a contracting authority in the meaning of public procurement. Who is doing the verifications? Right now in Europe, we have 7 accredited verification bodies. You can see them on the map. They have the accreditation schemes relevant for the EU ETV program. And all this information is also available on the official EU ETV website at the address I will show in a moment. So very briefly, how the process looks like. The ETV process is a stepwise process involving 6 steps, beginning from the contacting, when the verification, when the company interested in verified technology is contacting with the verification body to discuss the whole process. Based on those arrangements and the initial agreements, if the technology is a good candidate for verification, the official application stage happens, where the performance claim to be verified and the conditions for the verifications are agreed. Then there is a specific verification protocol stage. Here, exactly a detailed planning of the whole verification is being arranged, with a very important part of it, which is dedicated to the design and the requirements of testing that need to be followed in order to generate the test data that are relevant, sufficient, and credible to support the verified claim. Then the process allows to provide data that have been test data that have been generated outside the ETV process, but this data is then assessed against those requirements defined in the specific verification protocol. If the test data is not meeting those requirements, then we have step 4, which is dedicated to performing the testing, specifically dedicated to produce the test data for the needs of ETV. This testing is done, as mentioned, by test bodies that have or a test system that has to comply to the requirements of ISO 17025. So really under very restrictive quality assurance rules. Then all the data is collected. It is again assessed whether the what performance has actually been achieved by a technology. All those steps with the testing are summarized in the verification report, which is the key output of the process, and then presented in a more marketable document, which is the EU ETV statement of verification, that is published by the European Commission and summarizes the actually confirmed performance. And then this document is actually used for the marketing of the technology and could become, for example, a part of a technology dossier for the needs of tendering procedures. So this is more or less on the ETV process. I hope you managed to get an understanding of the process. And now I would like to move the floor to our next presenter for this introductory session, which is my colleague from the LIFEproETV project, Jacques Mehou. Jacques is a professor, was working as a professor of INSA Lyon, so the French engineering school in environmental engineering. Jacques has really a very extensive experience on ETV, participating in the development of the ETV process from the beginning, being an active member of the technical working groups for ETV that are supporting the implementation of the scheme. He also supported the French government and the French DEM agency for of ecological transition on developing a methodology for public buyers of innovative environmental technologies to support them in applying for ETV. He was also working on the practical use of ETV in tendering in the Monaco case that we'll be presenting later today. So Jacques, I think the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Isa, for this very comprehensive presentation of ETV. So next presentation, please. Okay, so I would like in this first presentation, next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to move the slide. Okay. Sorry, just okay. So I just would like in this first presentation highlight the importance of green and innovative public purchase of environmental technology. to meet the European and national environmental and climate policy goals, but also for the exemplarity of public buyers, especially in this field of environmental issues, and also to secure innovation, because we need a lot of innovation in this field. So as far as the European and national environmental climate policy goals, of course, I'm not going to list everything, but for example, there's very important issues like the decoupling between the economic activity and the use of natural resources, or the decoupling between the use of natural resources and the environmental impact, or the eco-efficiency. We need good environmental technology to convert waste to energy, to treat water, and all this technology has to be validated. Again, if we consider the objective of moving towards a recycling society with very high and ambitious target like this 75% of recycling in 2030, we need again to improve the level of the quality and the level of the use of a very good environmental technology. And if we consider in the framework of the Green Deal, of course, the Circular Economy Action Plan, this life cycle thinking is included, is part of the ETV scheme. And especially you can see the objective of empower consumers and public buyers, and also make circularity work for people, region and cities. So again, it is included in the European ambition to highlight the importance of public purchase. The second objective, I'm sure that a lot of people having to make some decision in the field of environmental issues are aware of this. One bad experience can damage the image of a technology for a very long time. We all know that in the field of waste management, in the field of water drinking preparation, use water treatment, we may have accident, explosion, fire, malfunction, but sometimes only simply non-conformity of the final product to what was expected, what was claimed, what was said at the origin. And this can occur, this can create a serious problem to validate and to develop the technology afterwards. And finally, we need innovation in this field because we want to develop new technology. We want to increase the level of efficiency of the technology, but people have to take some risk and to limit the risk. So how can we help public buyers to make their decision and to put into practice their ambition and their commitments to the people based on reliable data concerning both technical performances of innovative technology? So is it really working, and also real environmental added value of innovation? So for this objective combination of high environmental ambitions and innovation, GPP and IP, so Green Public Procurement and Innovation Procurement, are the good tools, but how can ETV can help? So what are the main difference and how ETV can help? So this is my last slide. So you can see that both in Green Public Procurement and Innovation Procurement, in fact, we have the same items. We need, of course, efficiency, technical, functional performances. We need environmental performances. We need innovation. And we may accept a certain level of risk and limit the level of risk. You know that the content is almost the same, but the proportion and the objective are not the same. For Green Public Procurement, the objective is the environmental performance and the efficiency. And we have for this to integrate innovation and to support innovation and to accept a limited amount of risk. And we are going to use existing technology already on the market. So this is the way where you can use already verified technology. By the contrary, on innovation procurement, the objective is innovation, because you want to put on the market a technology which is not already ready for the market. So you want to contact research and development. Of course, you have to obtain good results, efficiency, so you need a certain level of performance. You are going to accept a higher level of risk than in GPP because you are going to work on a technology which is not already working. And as this research is going to be developed now, of course, you have to integrate a certain level of environmental quality, either in the finality of the technology, if it is in the field of environment, but also in the global quality of the technology. It can be the end of life of the equipment, can be the nature of the resources. So we have the same items, and ETV can help for all these items. So ETV can be a proof of performance for the efficiency approach. Of course, ETV is going to be a guarantee for the green performance because in ETV there is a strong commitment to environmental added value on all the compartment of the environment along the life cycle. Of course, ETV is including a demonstration of the innovation because we have this validation of the existing data and development of a test plan for the new data. And we can say that ETV definitely is a de-risking tool because we are going to limit the use of technology without verified data. So thank you very much. I leave the floor to the next speaker.
Okay, Jacques, thank you very much, Jacques, for this setting. I think that together with my presentation, it creates a really perfect background right now to move immediately to the next session, where we are going to talk about exactly the innovative public procurement and the challenges of procuring green technologies by the cities. We have two speakers here, so we will start immediately with Stefan Covers, who is actually representing the organization that was supporting the organization of today's webinar. So let me introduce Stefan Covers. He is a contractor of the European Assistance for Innovation Procurement Initiative, which is run by DG Connect. Under this initiative, Stefan is actually advising contracting authorities in the EU and on the topic of the innovation procurement, using his very, very long, over 25 years experience in procurement and working in the field of innovation procurement. Stefan is also known to many of you probably from his multiple publications and also as a lecturer and presenter. Last but not least, Stefan is also the founder of the Covers Chair on Innovation Procurement. Stefan, please, the floor is yours.
I hope you can hear me. You can hear me, I think.
Yes, we can hear you and see you.
Okay, Isabella, thank you very much. It's really appreciated, and thank you for the invitation to give you a short presentation on the EFIP and the EFIP initiative of DG Connect. And if we go to the next slide, please, if you can do that. Yes. If we discuss innovation procurement, we need to understand what it is. So innovation procurement is just a sort of name for all kind of processes and procedures that entails innovation. And the standard approach, and hopefully you have seen this more often, is that we divide innovation procurement in pre-commercial procurement and called PCP, and public procurement of innovative solutions, PPI. And the interesting part about the PCP is that PCP in fact is a procurement of R&D services. And what you see here in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 is that it is an R&D procurement in phases, and it is a competitive procurement. So you see that it's not what's normally done in a one-on-one relationship, but you have a one-to-many relationship between the contracting authority on one side and technology vendors on the other side. And why has that been done? The PCP scheme, which formally has been established since 2007 by communication of the European Commission, has more or less been copied from the best practices in the United States. And we know that approach has the best effect and the best possible ways to move forward on the field of innovation. So competition is a vital part thereof. And what you also see is that when you start with phase one for the solution design, you start, for example, with 4 or 5 technology vendors. And during the process of prototype for development phase 2 and phase 3, you go to original development testing of limited volume. You end up with, hopefully, ideally, 2 technology vendors. What is the idea about the 2 technology vendors? That you do not create your own lock-in for this, the follow-up phase. Because the follow-up phase is the phase of procurement of innovative solutions, a PPI, and that is a new procurement procedure. Also, what you see here is that we use the terms of PCP and PPI. Perhaps you have also heard about the term of innovation partnership. An innovation partnership entails both the R&D phase and the PPI, the deployment. However, in the context of EFIP, we only support PCP and PPI, and that also has to do with some challenges that we see in the innovation partnership implementation. Another element that perhaps is known to you is that the PCP falls outside the scope of the procurement directives, and the PPI falls inside the scope of the procurement directives. So that gives a lot of flexibility for framing the PCP. The PCP, looking already has been discussed a little bit about the technology readiness levels. Normally, the PCP goes from TRL 3 to TRL 8, and the uptake PPI is about TRL 9. We have seen some PCPs with the low TRLs, but that's not a standard approach. A standard approach is really that you have something between TRL 3, 4 and TRL 8 as such. And the prototype is a very important step on this. In the context of EFIP, we have developed an approach and methodology that ensures contracting authorities to have the best possible outcome. And what you see here with this step-by-step approach is that you act as a sort of launcher customership if you would like to implement this kind of new ETV schemes. That the procurement procedure itself, that is here step 6, is just one of the steps in the total methodology, total approach. And most importantly is that you need to understand what you want. So that's needs assessment, you need prioritization. You need to understand what the market can offer. That's a SOTA analysis. You need to verify your findings with the market by using a dialogue, an open market consultation. And last but not least, of course, you need to translate that into your own business or value case. And that leads up to the procurement strategy. And if you have come to the conclusion that indeed there are no technology available on the market, then perhaps the PCP approach is a very good one. If you have come to the conclusion that there are already technologies developed, but for example, TRL 8, but not yet on the market, then the PPI is probably more appropriate for you to implement. And then, of course, you go to the normal procurement procedure. That can be a PCP, that can be PPI, and in PPI you have the standard procedures. There's an open, restricted, negotiated. I'm not going into that. And then, as a result of the procurement, you have the contract, and of course, that is where it's where the crown jewels should be, because the procurement is just a means to enter the goal, and the goal is that you enter to a contract as a contracting authority with one or more technology vendors. Well, of course, you have the evaluation and KPIs and things like that, but that's standard. What is so interesting about the PCP and the ETV? So we have come to the conclusion that if you see that there is a really added value for you as a contracting authority to steer the market, to develop technology that are ETV compliant, you could use that, and you can embed that in the PCP approach and the pre-commercial procurement approach. The goal of the PCP should be that the outcome of phase 3 PCP is that you would have an ETV verified solution. And in order to do that, you need to understand the ETV process itself. It has been already explained a little bit by Isabelle and by Jacques. and you need to align that process with the PCP process. And of course, there's challenges. I'm not going to say that's easy and simple ways to implement that. You need to understand the process. You need to understand the timing that's needed. You need to understand the milestones, how the verification is being done, what the costs are related to that, and of course, what I was saying about alignment and the integration of the processes is absolutely vital in order to avoid legal discussions in a later phase. What are then the possible scenarios what you can do as a contracting authority? And we already have seen that in other sectors, not on ETV, but for example in health. More or less you have two scenarios of two roles that you can play as a contracting authority. As a contracting authority, you can act as a facilitator, just saying, yes, I would like to do that, but the technology vendors have to do everything. Of course, it goes without saying that if you act as a facilitator, you only have limited steering possibilities as contracting authority. There's also limited responsibilities. From a legal perspective, you face lower claim risk, and there'll always be costs, but these are limited. If you have come to the conclusion that the facilitator role is not helping you enough to speed up the market, what you intend to do, then perhaps you can choose the role of an integrator. And you have stronger steering possibilities. You assume higher responsibilities. Of course, you have higher claim risk and you have high internal costs. But this is, so the decision, if you go left or right, should be based upon a proper business case analysis, a value case analysis, in which you have come to the conclusion that for your situation, for your case, going left as a facilitator, right as an integrator, the best way forward. But I think that you should also be aware of the fact that you could play and you could have different roles in implementing ETV scheme into your PCP process. So what we have said as EFIP, and the EFIP initiative has been set up since 2015 and will continue until next year, 2023, is that we are willing to receive applications, and if they're being selected by the European Commission, we can assist them, and then that will be the first EFIP assisted ETV PCP project. You received expert assistance from the start of the EFIP experience, but I think what is extremely important, specifically in these times, is that you're part of the EFIP family. We have an outreach, so all the colleagues, all the member states can learn what you are doing. And I think that idea of the European family is really vested into the EFIP initiative, in which we try to gain knowledge, share knowledge between contracting authorities throughout Europe, and of course we're also going to share lessons learned. And for this, how are we doing that? We have developed a toolkit. You can download it from our website, efip.eu. You can follow our webinars and workshops, and one of the workshops that is perhaps relevant for you, is on September the 15th on climate change, how to procure greener, in which we will give more insights and lessons learned on these kind of innovation procurement procedures. But I think that it's important from our side that we stress the importance of the assistance on the EFIP. And if we're moving in the right direction, the idea is that we're also going to translate that into the toolkit and the lessons learned, so everyone can look at it and implement it for future PCPs and hopefully also future PPIs. So rather than a closure from my side, just from EFIP, these are the webinars, the foreseen webinars and workshops for the coming year. We start in mid-May with the commercialization of innovation to overcome the value of death, and a very important issue from an innovation perspective. As it has already been explained by Isabella, testing is extremely important. So evaluation and testing schemes and methodologies and tools, benchmarking tools, etc., will be the core of the webinar on mid-July. And then in mid-September, we have the event on the climate change and procure greener. You can look at the website. There you can find the information, and you can apply for registration on the for the webinars. Hopefully, you'll be also, as a result of this this webinar, you become enthusiastic and you apply for assistance. You can still apply for the first call of 2022. It's open until mid-April, and if you would like to do that, you can contact my colleague Ana Lucia Jaramillo. You can find her details here, and hopefully we see you then in a concrete situation and concrete application for the first ETV PCP application. Thank you very much, and Isabella, going back to you.
Much, Stefan. I think it was a very inspiring presentation, setting up the scene on the use of ETV in innovation procurement. Just a very quick reaction. It was really very important what you have highlighted in your presentation about the role on testing and evaluation, and we'll be addressing that exactly in our next session that will follow after the presentation of Mark Hitson, who is already waiting. We will show some concrete examples on how this testing is setting up, is incorporated under the EU ETV scheme in Canada. Okay, so our next presenter today is Mark Hitson. So thank you very much, Mark, for being with us today. I think that you are a very famous person that doesn't need to be introduced, but anyway, I would like to set up a couple of sentences about you to those who do not know you. So Mark is Deputy Regional Director for ICLEA Europe. So he's also the Global Director for ICLEA's Sustainable Procurement Center. So a very, very competent person. He is responsible for the sustainable economy and procurement work with his 25 years of experience in that field, working together with the local, regional and national governments in different projects on policies and the strategies concerning sustainable issues in dealing with issues like smart cities, circular economy, business and city interaction, procurement, climate change and transport. So Mark is going to give us today a very interesting overview on the challenges that are linked with the public procurement of green technologies. So Mark, please, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much. Can you hear me okay, Isabella?
Yeah, we can hear you very well.
Great. I think you might have built me up a bit.
Mark, I'm not sure if we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, it's just switched off. All right, I'll start again there then. So yeah, there are a number of challenges when it comes to green and sustainable procurement, and particularly procuring sustainable technologies. I'm going to focus on a couple of the policy and legal aspects first, but I'm mainly going to focus on sort of the soft side, as I call it, really the skills and capacity building. So for the first one, the policy and legislation, I think is important, is really the labels, the certification and conformity. I think eco-labels can be a very valuable tool for procurers and very much linked, I think, to ETVs. You can ask for a certain eco-label, however, you have to ensure that it meets the conditions set out in the public procurement directives. And I think this is quite complicated to do currently for many public authorities. Eco-labels are a good mechanism to use if certain aspects can be included, but the current directives make it unnecessarily complicated, as I say, for procurers. They put the emphasis on the procurer knowing exactly what's in the label. However, the point of the label is to make it easier for procurers, as I've just said. So this is where ETVs come in. I think they can make the work of the eco-labels maybe easier and the work of public authorities easier. I mean, ETVs then can play the role of verifying the technologies, which is partly what an eco-label is trying to do to a certain extent as well, but maybe in a more complicated way. So the other aspect is the life cycle costing. I think the methodologies can be quite complicated. There are methodologies out there, but life cycle costing is complicated for public authorities, particularly procurers. Even those that aim at green procurement often fall short when costing negative environmental externalities and certainly the social impacts. In the award criteria, SPP generally still takes into account only operational costs, for example. But ETVs can have, again, a key role in calculating the potentially the life cycle costing and environmental impacts. So moving on to the other challenges and barriers, I think it's quite clear from the first wave of the COVID-19 health crisis, it became apparent that companies had major problems participating in public procurement. SMEs in particular, they face administrative burden obstacles in the form of the particular complexity of public procurement documentation and the procedures. And I think the current procurement system means that public authorities cannot sometimes express what they want, and therefore businesses don't necessarily understand the needs of the public authority. I think this has meant that businesses and suppliers have overpromised, particularly when it comes to sort of technologies, and they can't deliver in the end. And this is becoming a bigger problem over the recent years. And I think this is particularly the case when it comes to environmental requirements related to technologies. Another key aspect when we're talking about skills and capacity is it's important to make use of the pre-procurement phase. And I think this just isn't done in many cases. Stephen, of course, touched on this. Procurers need to know what the market, need to know the market, undertaking research, what's available, what's possible. And I think there's a real lack of buyer-supplier interaction in the pre-procurement phase. And this may be historical because it's been seen maybe that this isn't legal to do, but this is changing. And of course, it is possible to do it as long as it's done in an open, transparent way. And I think in many cases, suppliers really don't get enough time to react, particularly if they ask for innovative goods and services. So there's a risk also for suppliers, because they won't go for in green or environmental technologies because it requires an initial investment for the product, and there's no guarantee of a market then after. And I think probably a bit sort of wider than the scope of ETVs is that the current innovation and sustainable technology solutions being developed by manufacturers tend to define a problem they can solve, rather than solve a problem that is specified or defined by the public authority. So in other words, the private sector talks about products and services, whereas public authorities want solutions. So when procuring green and innovative technologies, it can be important to follow up through the contract monitoring phase. This is, again, probably one of the areas that's been sort of left aside, and the focus is on sort of specifications in the calls for tender. And this is where, again, ETVs can play a role in identifying barriers early on. I mean, it's important, I think, that public authorities, when they're purchasing a green technology, know what they're getting. And that's not always the case in contract monitoring, is that there isn't much follow-up. So that's something I think where ETVs can particularly play a strong role. The other aspect, I think, is the budgetary constraints, which I think is one of the key barriers at the moment for contracting authorities, and also the perception that they cost more, which is initially potentially the case, but over the longer term, of course, can save money through life cycle costing. But there's a perception that these green products cost more, and the fact that public authorities are still not considering the long-term savings. And this is due to a number of reasons, that different departments are responsible for the costs when it comes to sort of green technologies. I mean, if you just take the simple case of computers, it's one department that buys the computers, but they don't necessarily use them, and they certainly don't necessarily pay for the cost of running them, or the maintenance, for example. So these all need to be taken into account. Potentially ETVs can play a role in this. The other aspect, which I think a lot of people are probably hearing about now, is sort of the professionalization of procurement, raising the awareness of the importance of procurement training and skilling practitioners, but in particular sort of the decision makers and budget holders. And I think it's important to have skills for sort of a technological mindset is important. You know, there needs to be deeper knowledge of the material composition. Also needs to be better knowledge of business models when it comes to procuring green technologies. And I think this is key in various sectors such as textiles, construction and food. So I think SPPs can be seen, or purchasing green technologies can be seen as a full-time job, and it's seen actually as more, or currently used as more of an administrative role, which is, I think, a real lack of understanding of the potential procurement can have. So unless that's addressed, and this is much wider than maybe just looking at sort of technologies, I think there's going to be sort of continual problems over the next few years. I think another aspect that's important to be aware of, to sort of highlight the role of public procurement, or the upcoming role, and also ETVs can play, is that, you know, the SPI, the Sustainable Products Initiative, which is actually going to, the package is going to be launched in about 8 days, I think on the 31st of March. This is going to be, I think, probably one of the biggest packages since the public procurement directives, and I'm not too sure how many people are fully aware of what's happening there. I think it's going to set the architecture for the future of GPP in terms of it'll, I think, focus on sectorial legislation. The SPI is really widening the scope of the Eco-Design Directive, if you know that one. And there's going to be a provision on GPP, including binding requirements. So this, as I say, will go down to sectorial legislation, and they're looking at focusing on electronics, ICT equipment, textiles, furniture, steel, cement and chemicals. I think that's the list. So it's important really to look at this and the role ETVs can play in this, particularly if it's mandatory GPP criteria. We need to know if we're purchasing a technology that meets this criteria. Another final point I think was mentioned earlier, many of the challenges, people see it as sort of the legal and the legal framework and the directives, and this is just not the case. I think the directives, of course, are an essential element, but we need to go further to develop tools that genuinely assist procurers and develop the skills, capacity and legislation. So while it's good to put tools out there, I think the training to go with it is absolutely crucial. So, and I think ETV can be an essential tool as long as people know how to use it and know the benefits of it and what it means in terms of their public procurement process. So I'll leave it there, I think, for now. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Mark, for those really very valuable and very interesting comments. I think that under the LIFEproETV project, we have also discovered many similar observations on those skills and capacities that you have mentioned. And I'm also happy to see that you see the prospects for ETV in addressing this new policy developments, which are extremely crucial for the uptake of the scheme and its market recognition and acceptance, because this is what we are actually struggling out right now. So just as a kind of a continuation, I will move to the presentations that we have prepared from our LIFEproETV findings. I hope, Mark, you will be able to stay with us for the moment still, just to hear what are the other developments. So let's begin with a presentation of our practices and needs of buyers for the purchase of green innovations in GPP and IP that we have elaborated under the LIFEproETV scheme. With that, I want to introduce our next speaker. This is Sandrine Debusson, who is project manager at Provadamse Insavalor. So she's a technological innovation, which is a technology innovation platform of Insavalor, and which is exactly, the platform is dedicated to the development and promotion of environmental technologies. So Sandrine, together with Jacques, is working on me with the LIFEproETV project, and she was also involved in the development of this methodology to support innovative companies when preparing for ETV that was developed for the French Agency of Ecological Transition. Yeah, so I think, Sandrine, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Isabella, for this introduction. Well, I'm very pleased to share with you today the results of a study we have conducted with all the partners of the LIFEproETV project and the current practices and needs of buyers for the purchase of green innovation in the context of green public procurement and innovation procurement. So I will start with a quick overview of the study. So what we have done is that we first made a desk study related to GPP and IP, both at European level, but also in the LIFEproETV focus countries, so in Poland, Spain, Italy, Slovenia, Hungary, and France, in order to identify policies, organizations involved in the implementation of GPP and IP at national and European levels, but also European projects on these topics like GPP Stream, GPP for Growth, or GPP Best. So we also analyzed practices outside Europe and how ETV is recognized in public procurement in Canada, South Korea, and Philippines. And the example of Canada will be given later in this session. Okay. So we also conducted interviews of public and private buyers of environmental technologies, national organizations in charge of GPP and IP implementation, ministries, lawyers, and business support organizations in order to identify current practices and needs of buyers. From the analysis of this data, we identified key obstacles and opportunities for the use of ETV for the purchase of green solution and green innovative solution, and we proposed some practical recommendations for the implementation of ETV in this type of purchase. And we finally developed a practical guide explaining how the ETV framework and the ETV product can be used at each stage of the procurement process. I have some problem to move to the next slide. Could you do it for me, please, Agnieszka? Thank you. So let's now focus on the obstacles and opportunities we have identified for the use of ETV in procurement. So next slide, please. So the European Commission has developed, as just Mark said before, GPP criteria for more than 20 sectors to facilitate the inclusion of green criteria in public tender documents. Among the areas covered by the GPP guidance, some examples are given in green on the left of the screen. Only one refers to one of the 7 technologies ETV areas presented in blue at the top of this table, which is the water and waste treatment GPP guidance that has been published, I think, 7 or 8 years ago. Our analysis of the type of goods, services, and works covered by the GPP criteria are available. We have seen that the GPP criteria mostly addresses to consumption products like electric equipment, computers, heaters, paper, but we have also found that environmental technologies are already addressed in some GPP guidance, mostly energy technologies, technologies related to waste, material and resources, and water treatment and monitoring. So basically, environmental technologies are elements or unit processes of all installation or facilities that are the subject matter of the contract. Therefore, we can see that there is no common definition of environmental technologies in the ETV standard, which is the ISO 1434, and in the GPP guidance. So next slide, please. So sorry. This lack of common definition between ETV and the GPP is one of the key obstacles we have identified, but sorry, the main obstacle as for now is probably the fact sorry, that GPP is not mandatory, accepted for some areas like vehicles, energy, efficiency, and building. But among the focused LIFEproETV countries, GPP are not mandatory, accepted in Italy, where minimum environmental criteria are mandatory since several years. And you will know more about it with the presentation of Cristina Peretti from the Italian Ministry of Ecological Transition later in session 3. This voluntary approach is about to change with the recent European policies linked to the Green Deal. And we can give the example of France with the recent climate and resilience law published last August that requires public buyers to include environmental specification, environmental consideration, and at least one environmental award criteria in public procurement. So from the interviews, we have seen that buyers are aware that they will have to integrate environmental criteria into their procurements very soon, but basically they don't know how to do. Mark mentioned that the life cycle cost is difficult to implement, and buyers still make little use of flexible procedure and sourcing. So in addition to the lack of common definition for the environmental technologies in the ISO and in the GPP guidelines, there is therefore a limited, we have seen that the status on the environmental technologies, which is defined as products, services, and processes, may be difficult to determine in procurement terminology, which refers to goods, services, or works. Moreover, the competitive advantage of ETV is not reflected yet in the GPP guidelines, and there is a very limited experience and evidence of demonstrating the use of ETV in GPP. Regarding innovation procurement, they require extensive knowledge, skills, and competence, and there is, for the moment, limited track of record of procuring innovative environmental technologies. Some example of PCB of environmental technology will be given later in session 3 by Katarzyna Lenart from the Polish National Center for Research and Development. Next slide, please. But we have also identified several opportunities for the implementation of ETV in public procurement. Jacques Meilloux has already explained at the beginning of this webinar the importance of GPP and IP for the achievement of the climate and environmental objectives set in European policies, since we know that this objective can only be reached through the deployment of innovative technologies. Moreover, we have seen that most GPP guidance refer in part to environmental aspects of technologies requiring verification but by means of independent bodies certificate, and that is exactly what ETV provides. In addition, the definition of environmental technology according to the ISO standard, ISO ETV standard, is fully compatible with the definition provided for GPP, since they are both focused on reduced environmental impacts. So it allows technologies to fall under one or more subjects of green procurement, goods, services, or work. Another opportunity for the use of ETV in procurement is the potential link between GPP and green taxonomy, and this important subject will be developed in a dedicated webinar. So next slide, please. So if we focus now on the legal aspect of GPP, we can see that the verification body that delivers the statement of verification fulfill the definition of a conformity assessment body. So in accordance with the European regulation, since the verification body are accredited for compliance to ISO 1720 for Type R inspection bodies. In addition, the ETV verification report that includes high-quality experimental data may be considered in procurements as equivalent to test report from a conformity assessment. Consequently, the ETV statement of verification meet the criteria of third-party certificates and thus may serve as mean of proof with technical and also environmental specification in tenders. Another important characteristic of the statements of verification is that they have a lot in common with eco-labels, in particular with eco-label type 1, and can be used as means of proof in procurement. Finally, the ETV scheme can be used to check the conformity of performance to the specification, both technical and environmental. That is why ETV is a very interesting tool for the purchase of green innovative technology. So I will now give the floor to Jacques Méhu, who will present the recommendation and also the practical guide we have developed.
Thank you, Sandrine. Thank you for your presentation. So we are now going to go in the practical operation with the presentation of some very concrete recommendations to apply ETV or the ETV rules or principles in the framework of the procurement. So first of all, we developed in the brochure for the accompaniment of ETV a group of recommendations in 3 groups of actions, in fact, to unleash the potential of ETV in GPP. So all the presentation of these recommendations are going to be available in the brochure, which will be available on the platform next week. I just want to highlight some examples. So the first group of actions is technical actions. So I just mentioned 2, which is important. So work and develop the equivalence and mutual recognition between ETV statements of verification and other existing environmental certification standards and labels. For example, the eco-label type 1, which is the one which is used for the products in the European GPP, with the same type of criteria than the ETV. And also we recommend to make mandatory the requirement of performance assessment by independent third party in the framework of IP and GPP, and we will see later in along the steps of the procurement how it can be done. Financial actions also, so link ETV with sustainable financing tools like the ETV Green Taxonomy, and we are going to have another seminar on this later. And provide and promote environmental criteria of technology for capital providers. So you know that there is a lot of public money all over Europe which is dedicated to SMEs to develop innovation, and very often the local authority, the regions, even sometimes the states have some difficulty to define the performance criteria to know when they have to fund this kind of technology or not, because they need a de-risking tool, and again ETV can be a de-risking tool for this, and also for private money, of course, like business angels and so on. And organizational example, of course, we know that we have to develop the ETV awareness and commitment. So let's go in detail along the steps of the GPP and the IP process, and how can ETV help. So first step, preparation and planning of the procurement. So you have to, the public buyer, you have to analyze the market to make a benchmark of existing solutions, and they have to make a choice concerning the procedure for the procurement. So if we look at the GPP situation, so what you can do, you can check if among the verified technology in the published ETV statements, some of them could address the need of the contractor, or potentially can give some idea of what can be specifications for the procurement. And this is limited for the time being because we have only 48 very fully verified technology, but we have a great number in the pipe. And again, this is going to be developed in the next years. For the innovation procurement, even at the research development level, so even below TRL 7, which is a minimum requirement for the full verification process, you may integrate in the IP accompaniment of the developers towards ETV in order to include the notion of quality data for the experimental plan you are going to set in the program. As far as the choice of the procedure is concerned, for the DPP, if we want to have this verification of performance included during the time lapse of the procurement, of course, we need flexibility in time. So we recommend a competitive procedure with negotiation or competitive dialogue. For the innovation procedure, in the framework of the innovation partnership, it's recommended for solutions to be developed, and the one independent partner in charge of the ETV accompaniment can be integrated in the partnership from the true beginning. So from the true beginning, someone will be in charge of the accompaniment of the test plan for the production of new environmental data. Second step, preparation of the procurement documentation and draft specification and award criteria, very important. So for both GPP and IP, ETV schemes includes, as you know, two nature of criteria. First of all, the key technical performance is defined as a claim by the developers, but also a full spectrum of environmental added value covering all the environmental domain of impact, like in the LCA, which could be a consequence of the technology all along the 4 steps of its life cycle. So from the definition of the raw materials you need to build your equipment, for example, to the end of life of the equipment, recycling, everything. So the full spectrum of the life cycle is covered by ETV, environmental added value. So ETV can help the contracting authority to define the technical specification and the award criteria, the required minimum environmental and performance parameters based on existing ETV statements for the already verified technology, and needs, of course, of the contracting authority. We will see the application for the Monaco case. So then we have the crucial step of the procurement, which is the choice of the participants and the award of the contract, with the selecting tenders and evaluation and award. So for the GPP, again, for the verified technology, if verified technology are part of the answers of the contractors, ETV statement of verification can be the proof confirming the proper fulfillment of the performance. But for non-verified technology, not yet verified technology, analysis of the existing data provided by the proposers can be done following the ETV rules, because there is a specific guide for the verification on the quality of existing data. And for missing or non-reliable data, it's possible, it's recommended, to implement a test plan on a full-scale existing plant, or at least demonstration scale, following the ETV rules by independent third party, like in the ETV recommendation. And this is what we did for the Principality of Monaco for its municipal solid waste treatment facility renewal. And we have 2 short video to present just after. For the IP, the research and development program has to integrate quality assessment of the experimental data from the true beginning, even if it covers research data, the research laboratory have to follow a program of quality data. And again, it has to be validated by an independent third party. Finally, we have this last step of performance of awarded contract. So after the contract has been signed. So again, idem stage 4, both for GPP and IP, ETV statement of verification or the results of a test plan by independent qualified third party following the ETV rules may be implemented to control the efficiency of the awarded solution. And a test plan for IP also, a test plan by independent qualified third party has to be implemented following the ETV rules. The objective is not only to guarantee the quality of the procurement, but also to help the proposers to gain and to update some data that can be used after for the future verification process that can be definitely facilitated with a lower cost with this process. And now, after this presentation of recommendation, we propose to you to follow some videos concerning, first of all, the use case of the renewal of the municipal waste of recovery treatment plant of the Principality of Monaco. We conducted with Sandrine within Savaleur or Provedems. And afterwards, an interview we made concerning the validation of stormwater treatment solution in the Quebec province of Canada. Thank you very much for your attention. Okay, so we start with the case.
Cette usine, je rappelle qu'elle est en site assez contraint. Elle va être située sur l'îlot Charles III, le dernier îlot des délaissés SNCF. Elle doit être exemplaire en matière de sécurité, en matière d'émissions de gaz à effet de serre, en matière environnementale et en matière de traitement et de valorisation des déchets. Donc un challenge très important pour Monaco, et nous veillerons à ce que les meilleures technologies, les meilleures assurances soient données dans le fonctionnement et la construction de cette future usine. On va lancer cet appel d'offres au niveau international dans des magazines spécialisés, dans des magazines généralistes, pour que tous les concepteurs de produits innovants, de process innovants, puissent répondre à cet appel d'offres et nous proposer des process de traitement des déchets les plus innovants possibles. Donc aucune barrière n'est mise, aucune technologie n'est refusée dans l'appel d'offres. Nous analyserons en détail toutes ces différentes technologies qui vont être proposées, sachant bien sûr qu'il doit y avoir des garanties de fonctionnement derrière, avec ça ne sera pas des technologies sorties de nulle part, qui n'ont jamais existé, qui pourront être tenues en principauté de Monaco.
C'est un challenge qui doit être partagé par tout le monde, hein, tout le monde, c'est l'État bien évidemment, mais aussi tous les résidents de la principauté. C'est vraiment une démarche très citoyenne pour nous aider à respecter donc, le challenge que nous a donné le souverain pour respecter les engagements de 2030.
Okay, so you have seen in this first short video the political expression, very strong political expression of the need for this equipment, and the great openness towards innovation and the international ambition to make it a very good example of environmental quality. So after defining the ETV parameters of this equipment, of this tender, we defined a set of specifications involving efficiency criteria given by the government, treatment capacity, energy to be produced, high recycling rate, no exploitation of residues, minimum of landfilling, and environmental criteria, both from Monaco's strategy, but also from the ETV referential of environmental added value. Then the public procurement was co-constructed and published with explicit mention of a third-party assessment of performances according to ETV principles and rules. We think that this is probably the first international public procurement with explicit mention of ETV, with the reference of the GVP, of course, and the different kinds, and a clear call for innovation with at least a TRL 7 application as in the ETV referential. After analysis of the answers we received from all over the world, through a multi-criteria grid we built together, a short list of candidates was validated by the government, and a second phase involving the verification itself of the performance was implemented. The selection of parameters addressed 3 groups of criteria: efficiency of the treatment, environmental quality and added value versus actual technology in Monaco, which is incineration, and specific performances of the candidates equivalent to the claim. So some proposals have a specific items concerning emissions of particles, or another items concerning the higher recycling rate. So we integrate this specific criteria, so the claim, in the test plan. So the existing data provided by the vendor were analyzed through the ETV existing data quality guide, and for the non-validated data or non-assessed by the vendor, we implemented a test plan we proposed and applied. So the next video presents very shortly the implementation of one of the test plan we developed on the municipal solid waste facility of one candidate for innovative way of pre-treatment of waste in order, so only a part of the project, but very sensitive and very specific part of the proposal, pre-treatment of waste in order to increase the efficiency of sorting for recycling, so higher recycling rate than proposed by the competitors, and a specific preparation of RDF. So now we can launch as the next video.
On a normal day, we store about 200 tons of waste. For the weekend, we stock it up because there is no transportation of waste, so we need to have enough waste to work over the weekend, because the plant is operating 24/7. So the waste is dropped off here. So this is the type of waste that we are getting. So please have a look if it is somehow similar to what can be expected in Monaco.
Na wagę jedziemy. Darek, jedź na wagę, ale ty jedź wózkiem, żeby odważyć, dobra? 10 centimeters.
Yeah.
And this is 2.5.
2.5? Okay.
It's okay. Pomalutku, nie? Ładnie, szybciej po prostu. Przecinek 28.
The outside layer, 169 Celsius.
Thank you. So, if you have any question concerning this presentation, this use case, we will have the question answer time later. So I propose to move directly to the second use case, which is the use of ETV and the action of ETV Canada on the selection of the stormwater solution.
Alors, il faut comprendre au Québec qu'il existe un processus d'autorisation provinciale. Donc, certains projets doivent être soumis pour autorisation au gouvernement provincial. Et en cette matière, les travaux relatifs au système de gestion d'eau pluviale requièrent une autorisation du ministère de l'Environnement. Et c'est dans ce contexte que s'inscrit le processus ETV pour les technologies de traitement des eaux pluviales. Quand un projet est soumis pour autorisation au ministère de l'Environnement, des projets relatifs au système de gestion d'eau pluviale, le ministère s'intéresse à l'impact des rejets d'eau pluviale dans les cours d'eau récepteurs, notamment en ce qui a trait aux matières en suspension. Alors, le ministère de l'Environnement du Québec a une exigence de base de réduire de 80% les concentrations en matières en suspension, valeur qui peut être réduite dans certains cas à 60% et même 0% dans des cas particuliers. Donc, pour atteindre ces exigences de réduction, il faut mettre en place des solutions et certaines de ces solutions passent par l'utilisation de technologies de traitement d'eau pluviale. Pour atteindre les exigences du ministère de réduction des matières en suspension, il existe plusieurs solutions disponibles, comme les jardins de pluie, les systèmes de biorétention, les bassins de rétention, et aussi des technologies commerciales. Et parmi celles-ci, on retrouve les séparateurs hydrodynamiques, et qui sont des technologies souvent privilégiées par les initiateurs de projets. Les exigences du ministère en matière de rejet d'eau pluviale sont apparues en 2012, ce qui est assez récent. Et dès le départ, on a remarqué que les projets qui nous étaient soumis utilisaient beaucoup les technologies commerciales de type séparateur hydrodynamique pour atteindre les exigences du ministère. Comme je mentionnais, les exigences étaient de base de 80% et parfois 60%. Et donc, les fabricants avaient avantage à présenter leur technologie sous leur beau jour, c'est-à-dire avec une très grande performance. Alors, quand on regardait la documentation des fabricants, on constatait des taux d'enlèvement des matières en suspension très élevés, et parfois jusqu'à 90%. Alors, quand on regardait de plus près, par contre, les méthodologies pour obtenir ces valeurs, on constatait des déficiences dans les protocoles d'essai. Alors, c'est pourquoi il est devenu important pour le ministère d'établir des règles pour définir les moyens pour tester les technologies. Face aux problématiques liées au protocole d'essai pour les séparateurs hydrodynamiques, le ministère a voulu développer des balises, des règles claires, parce qu'évidemment, les projets sont étudiés au ministère par différentes personnes et dans différents bureaux régionaux, et donc il est important d'établir des règles uniformes à l'ensemble du Québec. Mais c'est important aussi pour les fabricants, fournisseurs et consultants afin que les règles du jeu soient claires et uniformes pour l'ensemble des parties prenantes et assurer une comparaison équitable entre les technologies et leurs performances. Donc, l'établissement de normes et de balises était gagnant-gagnant pour le ministère et aussi les parties prenantes. Au même moment où le ministère constatait l'importance de développer des balises pour l'approbation des technologies de type séparateur hydrodynamique, le programme ETV du Canada développait un protocole d'essai sur les séparateurs hydrodynamiques. Ce protocole a été publié en 2014 et c'est donc à partir de ce moment que le ministère s'est appuyé sur ce protocole d'essai pour vérifier la performance des technologies de type séparateur hydrodynamique. Mais ce n'était pas tout de s'assurer que les technologies soient testées conformément au protocole. Il fallait aussi que cela soit validé par une tiers partie indépendante. Et c'est là que Globe fait son apparition, puisqu'il s'agit d'un organisme accrédité par ETV Canada pour faire ce genre de vérification. Ce genre de vérification était fait au départ en vertu du programme ETV Canada, qui est devenu depuis le processus de vérification ISO 14034. Technologies confondues, il y a environ une cinquantaine de technologies qui ont été vérifiées. Pour la plupart, ce sont des technologies relatives au traitement des eaux pluviales. Alors, pour s'y retrouver, pour aider les gens à s'y retrouver, on a mis en place sur notre site web un tableau qui comprend les technologies effectivement approuvées de type séparateur hydrodynamique. Donc, ce qui apparaît sur notre site web sont les séparateurs hydrodynamiques approuvés, vérifiés et testés selon le protocole développé en 2014 et vérifié par une tierce partie indépendante. Il existe aussi un grand tableau disponible sur le site web d'ETV Canada qui liste toutes les technologies approuvées dans tous les domaines. L'avantage pour nous d'ETV, c'est qu'on peut se fier aux résultats des essais de performance qui ont été obtenus parce que les protocoles ont été, on a l'assurance que les protocoles ont été suivis et qu'ils sont rigoureux et que donc on peut comparer les technologies entre elles. On peut s'intéresser à partir de ce moment simplement à l'interprétation des résultats. Par exemple, au ministère de l'Environnement, comme tel que mentionné, le seuil pour l'acceptation d'une technologie, c'est 80% d'enlèvement des matières en suspension. Ça, c'est un critère du ministère de l'Environnement, mais une autre juridiction pourrait avoir très bien choisi un autre critère. Là. Ça, c'est le rôle des juridictions d'établir les critères d'acceptation. Le rôle de TV, c'est de fournir l'assurance que les résultats obtenus sont fiables.
Okay, I think that it was quite useful for you to see those practical examples on the use of ETV. You can also notice that in any case, there was always a very strong requirement from the contracting authority or from the governing body that was related to the technical performance. Also, as in the case of Canada, a very, very strong environmental objective behind it. So I guess that those two examples will definitely inspire the uptake of ETV for the needs of public procurement. So now, therefore, we have a time for a couple of questions to address through our session. So let me start with there were some questions that were related to the LCA. Maybe I will leave those questions to Jacques, who was really involved in those cases, setting up those procurement cases. So Jacques, maybe you could answer those questions on the LCA and the environmental added value.
Yes, thank you very much, Isa, for this. So thank you also for this question, because we have very often this question, how environment is covered in ETV, what is the difference between environmental added value and CA? So we have to be very clear. The verification of environmental quality in ETV is very important. It's mandatory. It's one of the main objectives, at the same level than the efficiency. But we decided, in order not to increase the burden for the SMEs, we decided to cover the whole spectrum of inventory of the impact, but not the calculation of the global impact. So, you know, probably everybody knows that in the LCA standard, there is the inventory effect, emission of greenhouse gases, pollution on the water, pollution, damage to the biodiversity, production of waste, anything. And then there is a very important step which need very high level specialists to integrate all this effect to calculation of a global impact, or global effect of a greenhouse effect due to different aspects, including consumption of aluminium, for example. So this is not the case in ETV. In ETV, we are going to present and take into account all the direct effect of the solution, but not the calculation, which is in LCA. The other aspect where we are covering same thing than LCA is the full spectrum of this life cycle of the solution, because we are covering the nature of the raw material and energy source we are going to use to create the equipment. We are going to cover as a second step the construction of the equipment. It can be probes, it can be a filter, it can be something aiming at provide an environmental technology or environmental service or environmental product. Then we have the third step of use of the equipment, so use of the solution, the use phase, which is also covered by ETV, and then also very important, the end of life of the equipment, the recycling of the equipment. So we can see the eco-conception of the equipment can have a very important role to the way the material that are going to be integrated in the equipment can be recycled, for example. So full spectrum environmental parameters and full spectrum of life cycle stage, but no calculation of the global impact like we have in LCA.
I just wanted to supplement very quickly and answer at the same time to another question that appears from Oceana. Actually, the purpose of ETV is not to do the LCA. It's, as Jacques said, we are using some of the aspects that are relevant to the life cycle of the technologies. And also when we are performing the assessment of the environmental added value, some of the parameters that are reflecting probably the impacts on the environment at, let's say, the operation stage, or depending, of course, on the claim of the end of life stage, may be turned out into the performance parameters to be verified, which is quite important because they are just reflected as numerical values and checked through the testing. So concerning whether those parameters reflect only the climate change parameters, no. It's exactly, Oceana, as you have written. It could be different environmental criteria. It could be to water consumption, energy consumption, the generated waste, hazardous waste, or avoidance of waste generation, up to some performance parameters that may be relevant to circular economy, like the productivity of a technology in terms of recovery of material, the purity of the recovered material versus the input material, and so on. So that's the second question that I see here is on the how long does it take for the institution to be certified to be an ETV verification institution? Well, the process actually depends on the accreditation body. So Nicola, if you would like to know more on that, please contact me. And also the first step would be to contact your national accreditation body that needs to set up an accreditation scheme in order to give you this accreditation. So then we have one more question. In the use cases, do the data and the tests were conducted under the ETV standard, or do the companies need to pass the whole verification process to be able to apply complete DPP tenders? I think it's the question to Jacques.
Yes, thank you. Very good question. So it depends on what use case you are referring. For the Monaco case, it was clearly expressed that it was not necessary for the vendor to present verified technology, of course, because there is no verified technology covering all the spectrum of the Monaco case. And as you know, there is, for the time being, only a limited number of verified technology and of course, in the waste sector, a limited number. So for the Monaco case, we decided to follow the ETV principles, which are mainly the common understanding of the specification, the common definition of the data, both technical and environmental, the common construction of the test plan, the third body verification of the test plan, the validation of these nickel data. So everything has been conducted under the ETV rules, but we accept, of course, that the technology selected by Monaco government are not yet verified. But of course, we encourage the company to to follow the full ETV verification. By the contrary, for the Canada case, as it is a government decision, government of the province of Canada, they decided to select only verified technology. So in this case, they use the ETV Canada, developed, co-constructed with all the people, stakeholders, vendors, technicians, researchers. They were all around the table to define the protocol. Very good example of collaboration. They decided to integrate this ETV protocol at the top of the decision process, because it is directly integrated in the legislation. So only verified technology can be accepted by the ministry. So this is an opposite situation in the two use cases.
Thank you very much, Jacques, for this explanation. I just wanted to, before we move to the next session, just highlight a very important aspect that Jacques has mentioned, this collaborative approach in setting up those testing protocols for the needs of green public procurement. This is exactly what happened in Canada. They really took all the stakeholders, the technology providers, the authorities, and whoever was interested in the process to really set up very transparent and clear testing protocols so that everybody is satisfied and nobody is discriminated. Okay, so right now let's move into another session. This time we're going to focus more on the national and the regional level. So I would like to start with our first presenter for the session. It's hello, it's still good morning. So good morning, Christina. It's really great to have you today with us. So Christina is from the Italian ministry, and she will be talking about the Italian green public procurement legal and technical framework as the driver for the circular economy. So she's really experienced in the topics that she will be addressing since she's working on the integrated product policies and green public procurement. So actually it was her team that contributed to the definition of the minimum environmental criteria for public tenders. So, Christina, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Isabella, for the introduction and for having me here today. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. So I will introduce how we implemented a GPP in Italy. Okay, it works. So I will give a very short introduction of the legal framework and technical framework, so how it is implemented, and then I will concentrate on how we verify the minimum environmental criteria in public tenders. So just to give you an idea of the of what public tenders mean in Italy and pretty much in all European countries at least. In Italy we have 42,000 contracting bodies that go from the main central purchasing body, which is called CONSIP, to like very small purchasing bodies of singular municipalities, for a total of over 178 billion euros per year. So these are data for 2020. And the total yearly amount of public tenders is 174,000, without considering smaller tenders of under 150,000 euros of value. So this is a lot of money, public money spent on purchasing, and it gives an idea of the potential that we have to orient the market and the production processes also. So it's all environmental policy, but also industrial policy. So through green public procurement, we have the opportunity of really challenging the industry towards more competitive products from the point of view of quality and environmental quality and innovation. And it's a very powerful and useful tool in this perspective. GPP is being addressed as one of the index we can use to monitor how circularity is implemented. This is at European level. So they still don't know how this will be done, but it's a work in progress also at European level. So at some point, some sort of green public procurement will be mandatory in throughout Europe, and it will be mandatory also to monitor how environmental criteria are introduced in public tenders. So it's important to start in every country to implement it and to measure how it is implemented. We are pretty good on implementing GPP, but we are not good at all on measuring the level of implementation. So that's something we're working on, but it's not easy because I showed you the numbers are very high and it's difficult to monitor all the tenders and for that amount of money with all those tendering authorities. So it's very difficult to do still. So this is a very short legal introduction, just to give you an idea of how we introduced GPP in Italy. It was at first voluntary. So we had some minimum environmental criteria, but they were to be included whenever possible. And this whenever possible was very shady definition. So my idea of whenever possible is different from somebody else's idea of whenever possible. So from a legal point of view, everybody was, well, basically only the more innovative tendering authorities were introducing these minimum environmental criteria. Then in 2016, we had the contracting law changed, and we had minimum environmental criteria mandatory. More specifically, we have mandatory technical specifications and contract clauses, which have to be included. But we have a work criteria that have to be taken under consideration, into account. So contracting authorities can decide to introduce them in their tenders or not, depending on the specific the specifics of the tender. So and these specifications apply to all the tenders of any amount, of course, for which we have the minimum environmental criteria. So the minimum environmental criteria are drafted by the ministry, and we start from what's out there. So we start from, for example, the eco-label or other type 1 eco-labeling schemes. We start from the GPP European Commission toolkit, or we start for single criteria labels such as energy labels or content of recycled content labels and so forth. And so we come up with a first draft that we call kamikaze draft, and we share it in a working group. And this working group is made from, there are some permanent members, which are the Ministry of Economic Development and the Ministry of Economy and Finance. And then we might have other ministries as well, depending on the specific product categories. For example, for food services, for example, in school, etc., we had the Agriculture Ministry. Or for cleaning services, we had the Health and Safety Ministry. So the working group change depending on the specific product category. Then we have representatives of trade associations, and these ones, of course, change depending on the product category, and representative of other relevant stakeholders, such as environmental and social associations, labeling schemes. We have our accreditation, a national accreditation body, which is called Accredia. Then we have some members of academic and research community, the national system of environmental agencies, and then representative of institutions and procurement bodies. We discuss in this working group this first draft, and we come up with second draft and third draft. And when we have a final proposal, we share it with the national GPP management committee, and then we share it we send it for the adoption to the Minister of Ecological Transition. So why do we call minimum environmental criteria? Basically for two reasons. The first one is that these are basic requirements. They go beyond legal requirements, but they are not overly highly demanding, since we cannot exclude big parts of the market. But they are minimum because public authorities can decide that they want to be more innovative, and they can include stricter environmental criteria in their tender. So they can be more challenging. The minimum environmental criteria is a big document, usually made of a foreword, where we explain what our environmental objectives were, and we give sort of an overview of the environmental and eventually social applicable legislation. We try to give some hints to the public authority as with regards with the needs analysis, so in order to help them to decide if it's better to tender for a product or a service, or to understand maybe the duration of the contract, which should be. And then we have the main technical document, which is made of selection criteria, technical specifications, contract clauses, and award criteria. So just to give you an example, we have these, usually the first criteria are selection criteria, and normally they qualify the requirements of professional and technical capacity of the economic operator. So, for example, in waste management, we ask for the operator being able to manage his environmental impacts. Selection criteria are not mandatory, so the tendering authority can include them or not, depending on their specific needs and intentions. Then we have technical specifications, which are mandatory. And for example, in the printer's minimum environmental criteria, one of the technical specification is that the product must work efficiently with 100% recycled paper, even when working duplex printing. So in order to allow, of course, the use of recycled paper without blocking the printer. Then we have contract clauses, which also are mandatory and give specific indications on how to execute the contract in the best environmental way. For example, for cleaning services, one of the criteria is that staff is regularly trained to ensure correct use of detergents and machines. with the aim of reducing the environmental impact of services, of the service. So of course, you can have the best performing detergents and machines, but if the workers, the staff is not trained, they can use it not properly. So we set up a requirement for that as well. And then we have the award, one of the award criteria, which are not mandatory, but have to be taken into account. So if the contracting authority feels that it suits them, they can include it in the tender. And these are criteria that award a specific technical score depending on the specific criteria. So, for example, in the minimum environmental criteria of working shoes, one of the criteria, award criteria, is that extra technical points are awarded on the basis of the number of offered products that complied with the Ecolabel scheme. And this is in Italian, but just to give you an idea of how the document of the minimum environmental criteria looks like. So this is the foreword, and then these are the all the criteria. We have selection criteria, technical specification, and contract clauses, and then of course our criteria to follow. These are the product categories for which we have currently active environmental criteria. So we have street furniture, diapers and incontinence products, work footwear and leather products, printing paper, printing cartridges, building constructions and maintenance, printers and printing services, public green management, road transport vehicles, public lighting, building heating and lighting services, textiles, renting and cleaning, food services, cleaning and disinfection services, fabrics and textiles, urban waste management, which is quite old and it's due to be published soon, the review, and the same for supply and rental of furniture, which we sent to the minister for adoption, and we hope that it will be published soon. Currently, we're working on minimum environmental criteria of computers and servers, which is an update of a previous quite old document. We are updating the buildings construction and maintenance, and street furniture as well. Then we have 4 new minimum environmental criteria that we are working on, which are events organization, public transport services, vending machines, and roadwork. So let's pass on to what's more interesting for today's topic, which is how are minimum environmental criteria verified. So each criteria is, for each criteria, we also give indication on about how it should be verified. Normally, to prove compliance, authorities can ask for a report of an accredited laboratory or a conformity certificate to standards or labels where there are, of course, where these are defined, or inspection reports or producer technical reports or other sort of documents such as producer or supplier's statement when none of the above is available. The first 3 are formal documents. So They are issued by a verification body, which is accredited by the national accreditation body, which is one in each state. So these are just more detail of these ones. So the report of an accredited laboratory is done accordingly to ISO 17025, and as we've seen today, the ETV follows this standard. Then we have assessment of conformity to labels or standards, which are the environmental labels such as Ecolabel, Nordic Swan, or EPD, or TCO certified, and so on. Then we have system management certification, which is a certification for organizations. It can be environmental, it can be quality management, it can be social responsibility management. It depends on which standard one refers to. Then we have inspections reports and or producers' technical reports and statements, which are for aspects not covered by standards. So the contracting authority needs to specify what information must be included and has to be able to evaluate it, which is not very basic, because it asks for specific training from the public authority, but also the other means of verification require very high training by the contracting authority, as the contracting authority that is awarding the contract needs to be able to understand if a certificate is still valid, it really proves what the environmental criteria asks. So in Italy, that's something we are really trying to work on and training. So we are trying to really give in-depth training to public authorities, which again, it's not easy as we have a lot of contracting authorities, but it's something we are really trying to work on. And just a few ideas coming from what I've heard today about ETV, which I try to deepen in the last few days, but I had some interesting ideas today listening to my colleagues' presentations. So at the moment, I don't think it's easy to include ETV in standard GPP verification processes, as environmental technologies are not a lot still out there, but it's something we can work on, especially in our training sessions. So just to put it out there to public authorities and start to get them in this view of this new tool that can be used to verify environmental technologies. And also we can use it, I was thinking just before, we can ask for ETV when we give finance to research projects, for example. So that's something we will work on in our next, in this year funding, because every year we fund, we give money to universities or other research bodies to come out with new environmental technology, for example, on waste reuse. So we can introduce, we can ask for a mandatory ETV evaluation at the end of the research project. So,
Christina, sorry, I just have to put a full stop here because we are really, really below this.
I finished anyway.
I really appreciate all your comments that are really valuable, and I think that is, since Italy is participating in the ETV scheme from the very beginning, I guess that through the different actions that we are planning under LIFEproETV at the national level, there will be definitely time for discussing all these use cases for ETV on your national level. I just wanted to make one quick comment. Please do not put the ETV statements of verification under the ISO 17025 standard, because in the light of ETV and the 14034 standard, the verification reports have the status of inspection reports, and the test reports have the status of accredited of test reports under 17025. So please consider that this is the status of an inspection body report, but we'll be glad to continue with Italy on that. So thank you very much for this really very interesting presentation, and I guess that we are still staying in Italy, since we are going to the local level right now with Margherita Finamore from the municipality of Pesaro. So I will just go very, very quickly. So Margherita is dealing with the sustainable construction sector. So this is, again, a very broad, I would say, opportunity for implementing ETV, but also green public procurement. So I will just immediately switch, just to save time, into this presentation. So please, Margherita, the floor is yours.
Okay, I hope you can hear me now. Thank you. Welcome to everybody, and many thanks for inviting me at this conference. And I'll be speaking, as you said, about the green public procurement and the lesson learned from its application in Italy. If you can go on with my slide. Oh, okay, I can go by myself, yes. Okay, let's start right to the introduction, and I will explain about you the sustainable aspects are introducing the GPP, developing a methodological framework for applying environmental criteria in the GPP to secure the achievement of a truly sustainable and affordable building for all the community. And then about the circularity and the importance of procurement and monitoring through a verification scheme such as ETV, the case study of Pesaro City, and recommendation and results. Okay. At first, a strong analysis of the stakeholders involved in the project was carried out. Final users, teachers, students, assistants, parents, the councillor and the mayor, the residents in the neighborhood, and also technicians, suppliers, and construction firms. Then the analysis of the their needs and their expectation, all the needs selected as the most important were transformed into the technical requirements. The design planning and the administrative procedures were both designed at an early stage, and it implies putting sustainability in place straight away with a multidisciplinary approach. All the technical requirements were well described in the tender, according to the environmental minimum criteria that Christina told before. And because the minimum criteria are mandatory in the Italian law that identifies the environmental criteria at the national level according to the EU common targets. And then monitoring of flow material during the building construction phase and also at the user stage was the most key part that was implemented. And I would like to stress that the use of the voluntary schemes such as ETV for verified performances of environmental technology is an essential tool. Okay, this is the implementation of sustainable criteria selected and transformed into technical requirements in the call for tender. The aim of the project is go beyond the resource-efficient use and cleaner production since the design phase, during the construction phase, based on the tendering process. What's more important is that the call for tender describes clear technical specifications and provides measurable requirements against which the tenders can be evaluated. Performance-based criteria describe the expected results and which outputs are mandatory. In the case of this project, two main criteria were selected as mandatory: obtaining a near zero energy building, school, and providing the environmental energy certification using the LEED certification scheme, achieving at a minimum the gold certification. Okay, so let's dig right in the 4 goals selected to attain these results: the near zero energy building standard and certified LEED Platinum with a scoring of 88 points, the highest scoring school energy environmental certification in Europe, and the 3rd highest scoring school in the world out of about 1,700 certification in the LEED system. These are the 4 goals in which the requirements were grouped and developed in the third one. Low carbon footprint, comfort for all, renewable energy production, and an energy consumption reduction. Okay, this is the first one, the low carbon footprint, but I would like to focus on the environmental impacts and especially on the waste management during the construction site. You can see the picture during the construction site where all the material flows were collected. We have not simply applied the waste reduction or maximize recycling, but in the application of the principles of the circular economy, the waste management has been developed to trigger a process of control and monitoring of all materials and waste during the construction phase. About 556 tons of waste have been produced, and thanks to the obligation written in the call for tender, 98% of recovered waste was achieved and certified by the evaluation scheme. Comfort for all is guaranteed by a remote and customized temperature in all classrooms, thanks to the sensor for thermal comfort and indoor air quality ensured by a mechanical filter ventilation climate system with a CO2 monitoring able to guarantee higher levels of indoor air quality with air exchange of 5 volume per hour. In every classroom, a both natural and artificial light control system has been installed, and a high acoustic performance is obtained to create the best environment for learning and teaching. Renewable energy production. Let me give 2 examples. 1,300 euro square meter is the cost of the school building. That is the standard cost of a traditional building, and less than I would like to talk about the PV panels that cost 3,600 euro going. That is exactly the energy that is needed for the consumption of this building, and the investment cost is about 3 million, and this the cost of the PV panel plant was very low and extremely affordable due to the performance of the envelope studied very deeply. energy consumption reduction due to the study of the energy envelope. And so I would like to highlight that this building produce less than 10 CO2 kilo square meter per year emissions compared with 550 of CO2 kilo square meter per year of a conventional building. So the low impact is very high. Our research showed that it's necessary to change the traditional approach in a green public procurement to obtain significant results, as it is equally essential to carry out an accurate monitoring and verification of the expected outcomes using an ETV scheme such as we are talking about in this conference. It means adopting a more circular approach based on a deep analysis on the environmental goals to obtain not only energy efficiency, but circular buildings with low environmental impact. We received an international prize of COP26 in Glasgow for Green Solution Award in Energy and Climate Temperate. And my last slide is related to implementing circular procurements, means going beyond the lowest price at purchase, so the contracting authority can evaluate the quality and circularity aspect of the tenders using the predetermined and measurable our criteria. Finally, I would like to highlight that the independent verification of the environmental and technical performances of this innovation by an accredited third party such as ETV is crucial to ensure such achievement. And thank you. Thank you for your attention, and I am happy to answer any question you might have.
Margherita, thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. I just, when I was listening to your presentation, it immediately reminded me how ETV has been implemented in the US, for example, when they were looking into the use of the scheme more from the challenge perspective. Like, I think it was something like 15 years ago when they had the challenge of greenhouses. And this, the way that they used ETV there was that they made a kind of a mapping of the different technologies that are contributing to the greenhouses. And that included something, for example, that you mentioned, like the air quality systems. I mean, the air conditioning, the different materials that are being used to ensure the energy efficiency, the solar panels, so the energy consumption. All these things, or the water consumption, again, because this is another aspect that is probably not addressed, but the water use by the building is quite important, and you may have very, very innovative systems that are contributing to making this house very green. So all these technologies, and this is what I wanted to highlight, all these technologies are possibly possible subjects to verification under ETV. And with those statements of ETV being used and recognized by those who are designing those buildings and by those who are actually making the procurement, would be really a very, very strong lever for the recognition of the ETV statements, and at the same time the way of ensuring that the ETV statements are delivering a competitive advantage to those who decide to verify technologies. Yeah, we can discuss it later on, because I already see Katarzyna there. I know that we have a delay right now, but I just wanted to say that the next presentation that Katarzyna Lenart from our National Center for Research and Development from Poland is going to present is very, very interesting, because this is really a scheme where innovation procurement has been used and designed specifically to purchase innovative environmental technologies. And as far as I remember, and Katarzyna, please correct me if I'm wrong, 9 such schemes have been developed right now, and they are being implemented. So I would say that they have been developed so well that they have been even recognized and awarded. It's a pity that ETV is still not there, but I think that this is a melody for the future, and we'll continue the dialogue here in Poland on really how to use the scheme. As you could see, it really is beneficial, as Stefan showed how it can be implemented. for the innovation procurement. But, well, I think that everybody's waiting for your presentation as well. So please, Katarzyna, go ahead.
Thank you, Isabella, for a great introduction. And first of all, thank you very much for invitation. It's great to be here. Dear ladies and gentlemen, my name is Katarzyna Lenard, and I'm representing the National Center for Research and Development from Poland. And I will present you how we conduct our green public procurements with usage of pull innovation and pre-commercial procurements. Okay, it's working. And in the beginning, I would like to briefly introduce the National Center for Research and Development. So first of all, we are a public institution. We are an executive agency of the Ministry of Science and Higher Education of Poland. And in general, we connect the world of science and business because we are conducting and we are launching research and development programs. We also co-finance R&D projects and support domestic entrepreneurs. And generally, we are doing our best to stimulate the social and economic development of Poland. One of our greatest interests is green transformation. We really care about this, and we are aware that due to the dynamic climate changes, we need to act now, and that is why we launched 9 green procurement with PCP. And for such, as Isabella said, for these 9 procurements, we created a special strategy. It is called Innovation Super Strategy. And in this strategy, we implemented pull innovations as a transformation pull. In such type of innovation, it is a public institution like us, for example, like NCRD, who defines or identifies the challenge to be solved or the need to be fulfilled. And then it searches for the solution. And in our case, we are searching the solution through PCP projects. And in our and it is crucial for our strategy to be effective. And this is the crucial step for us to give the direction for the transformation, because we are aware that the market may be not able to carry out such a great and huge change by itself. So in our strategy, we have some assumptions. For example, we have assumptions like our technologies should be as final as possible. So it means they must be as best as possible. For example, in our project for electrical power storage, we require the battery to be 100% recyclable, not 50%, not 80%, but 100%. So it is the best available technology. We also want our technologies to be cheaper than traditional ones, because it ensures the wide deployment of the technology and the solution. We also want our technologies that should be developed to be possible to implement in the domestic market. We also have our free win principle for the scopes of the project. We want our projects to be cleaner and better for the environment. We want our PCP projects to make people healthier and be affordable or cheaper for them than traditional solutions. And we also want our PCP projects to deliver more materials, products, or anything for the economy and business, and of course to be local. And then I will say how we conduct our PCP projects in the Innovation Super strategy. In the beginning, we have our call for applications, and we assess the applications with the criteria that are announced with the that are published with the announcement of the PCP project. So they are known to the potential contractors. Then we have our PCP projects divided into several stages, and with each next stage, the complexity and the readiness level of the solution that is developed is increasing. And that is why we implemented a competition of contractors in the subsequent stages, because after each stage, we test the solutions and we assess them, and then we choose the best technology. So for the next stages, we decrease the number of the contractors, so they need to compete. And that's why we are guaranteed with the spectacular effects. And what is more, for the next each stage of the PCP projects, we are increasing the level of financing for the R&D. And this is a very effective way of spending of public funds, because, for example, when we have stage one with a prototype, we have several contractors, we get several technologies with a less amount of money than regularly. And then we select our contractors basing on the measurable parameters. It is very crucial, because all we care actually is technology. And we are open to have in our PCP project startups or innovators or anyone, but we really care about the technology. And that's why our process is very transparent. There are no complaints, because the process of assessment is actually autonomous. And that's why we also reduce the formal requirements for our contractors. We are focusing on the best technologies. And we also want in our PCP projects to have both technology and process innovation, or of course mix of them. And we do not tell our contractors which technology they should use for the solutions or which way they should perform. It is up to them. We only care about the technology and the result. And also in our innovation support strategy, we have a final stage with full-scale demonstrators. So this is the final confirmation of the developed technology, and we can see in the real scale, in the real environment, that this solution that was developed is operating properly. So for us, it is, let's say, it's a point of reference, like maybe not like ETV, but ETV could be another point of reference to that full-scale demonstrators. Owing to the innovation support strategy, we are also able to prepare technology benchmarks for the market. And also we care about, and we are focusing on the widespread of knowledge through the market. And that's why we are publishing so-called good practices. And this is, of course, effective stimulation of whole sectors of the market. And sometimes, for example, like in the case of our innovative biomethane plant project, we are creating the market because, for example, there is no biomethane plant in Poland at all. And as I said, we are focusing on a wide distribution of our solutions, and that's why our strategy includes technology licensing. So our contractors are able or are even stimulated to license their technology, of course, for a specific amount of money. And we, as the NCRD, set several agreements for continuation of the technology development. For example, we have an agreement with the National Fund of Environmental Protection and Water Management of Poland. And another example, we have another agreement with the Polish Development Fund, so they can implement or introduce another market support for the technology. So we have wide deployment guaranteed. And as Isabella said, our innovation support strategy was awarded by the European Innovation Procurement Awards in the November of 21. We had second place from almost 40 entities from whole Europe. So it was really nice for us. And Yeah, and going back to the PCP, here you can see our 9 PCP projects. For example, it's innovative biomethane plant, sewage treatment plant of the future, process and energy efficient building construction, heating plant of the future, combined heat and power plant, HVAC for schools and houses, like in Italy, for example, micro retention systems, electric power storage, and heat and cold storage. And as you can see, all of these projects are focusing on green transformation and the Green Deal objectives. And within these 9 projects, we get 57 technologies. So it is a really a very effective way of getting new solutions and new technologies and stimulating the markets. And as you can see, by 2023, we will have 21 to 30 technology demonstrators. And all of that was done with, well, actually quite a small budget. For the 9 PCP project, we got almost 50 millions of euro. As an example, here you can see as an example our process and energy efficient building construction project. And in this project, we wanted to change the traditional way of constructing buildings, and we require from our contractors modularity. I mean modular buildings and prefabrication, because these 2 principles, these 2 requirements allows us to build and to construct the buildings much faster than regularly, with lower prices, and all of that with full equipment of such houses. And you can see in a minute what is more important. All of these buildings has a low carbon footprint and a positive energy balance, and all of them are basing on recycled materials. And here you can see the real pictures from the development stage, and such building may be constructed within only 2 months. So for us, it is spectacular, and it is also fully equipped with furniture and stuff. And also here you can see our sewage treatment plant of the future. And this is also pictures from our development stage. And in this project, we wanted to turn the traditional sewage treatment plant, which is dealing with the utilization of sewage, into a production facility, because our sewage treatment plant of the future will produce clean water, 100% clean water, and the fertilizers. So we close the nutrition circuit according to the circular economy. And this is what we do in NCRD. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Katarzyna. It was really interesting. I do regret that we did not manage to introduce ETV into, especially to the last project on the water treatment, although we tried, but I hope that next time would be this opportunity. We will definitely continue discussing how to integrate ETV into this, I would say, innovation system or ecosystem for innovations in Poland. So we will be staying definitely in touch. Right now, I think with our agenda, it's high time to move into our interactive session. I do not see any questions right now in the chat box. I think it's because we are out of schedule already. So I will immediately give the floor to my colleague, Rowena Prekak, who from ENEA, to discuss with you and get your opinion on, after all those presentations that you have seen, where do you think, on what role ETV could be taken on board in the public procurement procedures? So please help us to draft our policy briefs and give your opinion now. Rowena, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Isabella. So I will try to be quick because we're really running out of time. We have drafted some policy briefs, and one is connected with the green public procurement. So what we have done is to wanted to understand how we can link these two tools and how we can use ETV to empower GPP, and how can GPP then empower ETV. So we have drafted an executive summary. So it's a short summary of the policy brief. We have, first of all, made an analysis of the context. We have tried to focus on the core of the problem, and then we have found out some, let's say, solutions, which we have called statements. And these statements are some actions to be put in practice. What we wanted from you today is to, according to what we have heard during this very interesting webinar, which is your feeling on our findings, in order to have let's say a kind of validation of these findings. Once we have your idea, your assessment on what we have found out, then we can then draft the recommendations, which are the key messages for the policymakers. Okay, so we can start with the we can start with the survey. Agnieszka, are you starting with survey? Okay, thank you. So the first statement is the mandatory requirement of performances assessment, which is technical and the environmental, by independent third party should be implemented in GPP and IP to secure the purchase of the product, technologies and services. You have 4 possibilities: strongly agree, agree, do not agree, and strongly do not agree. And clearly your contribution is very important for us to understand if what we have found out is matching with your feelings and with your let's say knowledge on this issue. So we have, let's say, mostly agree and some strongly agree. So this means that the statement is most of the auditors agree with what we have found out. We have 15 voters out of 48. I ask you to vote if possible. I mean, it is really important for us. Okay, so I can see that most of the auditors agree. We have like 30% that agrees, and then 8% that strongly agrees. So we can then validate the statement. So let's go to the second one, which is ETV statement of verification can be used as an equivalent to eco-labels type 1 as mean of proof of the conformity of performances to the environmental specification for the purchase of innovative environmental products, technologies, services. Okay, so here we have, it's a bit, I mean, let's say that the audience here is expressing itself a little bit differently from the previous one, because we have 2 votes which disagree. But then we have other votes which strongly agree and agree. But I think that we should take in consideration, I think we can take in consideration, let's say, that a couple of votes which disagree and try to understand what is the reason why. But still, I can tell that according to the results of the questions that I can see from here, I don't know if you have the possibility to see them. Most of the auditors agree and strongly agree. Okay, so I would give some last chance for the auditors to vote. As I said, it is really important for us. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we go to the next one, which is the ETV statement of verification can be used as means of proof of the conformity of performances to the technical specifications for the purchase of innovative environmental products, technologies, and services. I can see you vote. Let's say that this is a statement that meets a strongly agreement, because the results of the survey are mostly on strongly agree and agree. So we say that we can say that this solution, for example, is an important policy recommendation. Okay, so let's say that we met some agree and strongly agree, so we can finalize this part. Okay, thank you. So, okay. So we're the next one, which is ETV scheme can be used in innovation procurement to design the test plan of innovative environmental solutions developed to ensure high quality experimental data to allow future verification. So what do you think about this? And I can see that the voters here are agreeing and strongly agreeing, which means that this is another very important policy recommendation. Okay, so thank you. Let's say, this policy recommendation is meets your approval, so thank you very much. And we pass on the last one, which is ETV scheme could provide a reference to develop specific GPP guides for environmental technologies. What do you think about this last statement? I can see here that most of the auditors agree and strongly disagree, but I can also see a disagreement vote, which clearly should be taken in consideration, and we will try to understand how to improve this statement. Okay, I think that most of the participants have voted, so I would close the survey. Okay, so thank you very much. This was very, very useful for us. We will take in consideration your, your votes and your approval on our statements. And I will give back the floor to Isabella, because I think that we are a bit
Thank you very much, Ravena, for going through the survey. I think that most of the results that we have gathered are positive, which means that the all work that we have done on the LIFEproETV in order to setting up the frames for using ETV in GPP and IP was actually correct. So I wanted to thank all our speakers and all our audiences to staying with us until the end. I know that we are out of schedule, but I think we have managed to present to you some quite important and maybe new things to you as well. I wanted to say that the brochure that Jacques was mentioning on the green public procurement and innovation procurement and how to use ETV in it will be available, I guess, by the end of this week on our website. We'll be promoting it through the social media as well. All the meetings, all the recording from those meetings, the videos, they will be also available on our website together with the presentations upon the consent of our prelegents. I also cordially invite you to join our ETV community on our LinkedIn webpage. We already have close to 500 people there, which means that the topic is of interest. And right now, probably our LinkedIn is the, I would say, most updated source of information on what is going on ETV at the national level, international level, EU level. So, and I hope to see you at our next webinars as well. Maybe just a quick announcement here that the ETV stakeholder forums, or a big conference announcing the launch of the full-scale ETV program, will be organized on the 1st and the 2nd of June in Brussels. So please follow us for details. The save the date information will be released soon. Most probably that will be a physical and a hybrid event, depending on what the COVID will allow us to do. So once again, thank you very much for the EOSH team to help implement the webinar. Thank you very much to Jacques and Sandrine. Without you, it wouldn't be possible to gather all this information and have this first of a kind webinar on ETV and public procurement. Once again, many thanks to our speaker, and we stay in touch with our audiences. Bye-bye.